5 myths that I see all the time in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. What are they? And these are big ones, guys. My name is Bill Jones. I'm the head instructor of top-level martial arts in beautiful downtown Cuyahoga Falls. You're watching Professor's Corner. Thanks for watching, guys. I'm a black belt under Master Pedro Sauer and Tony Rinaldi, and this is my channel, man. So let's jump right into it. 5 myths, because that could be a lot of things, but let's look at the ones that I think are the biggest myths of jiu-jitsu, or the biggest myths I see tossed around in the jiu-jitsu community. And let's start with the first one. And this one isn't really fair, but let's get to it. Number 5 is that size and strength don't matter. Guys, there are weight classes for a reason. Size, strength, it matters immensely when it comes to anything physical. Anything. And to assert that it doesn't matter is really not a way that you should be putting it. What it really means when they say that size and strength don't matter is that the average person can take care of themselves against a reasonably large person if they know jiu-jitsu and the other person doesn't. But if you're both experts in jiu-jitsu, Mikey Musumeci versus Gordon Ryan, Gordon Ryan is going to dominate him 10 out of 10 times, no questions asked. It's just how it's going to go. I would be shocked to see Mikey be able to beat him in any kind of meaningful way, especially without the gi. And it's mainly because of size. They're both extraordinary at jiu-jitsu, and they can certainly both handle anyone who doesn't know jiu-jitsu. Barring that it's empty-handed, of course. You start bringing weapons in, so it's a whole different story. But with that said, size matters immensely. It's why there's weight classes. It's why that in the absolute division, let me just say, at the world level, no lightweight has ever won that. Certainly you can go to Grappling Industries and see it happen. Some of those local tournaments, you see it happen quite often, actually, which is a really impressive feat. And if you've done it, if you're a small person out there and you've gone and won the absolute divisions, do me a favor, shout yourself out in the comments. I want to hear about it, because that's a really, really hard thing to do, and I'm very impressed. But yeah, it's kind of the promise that jiu-jitsu makes, right? And judo makes that same promise, and you hear it in like a lot of martial arts. And like, it's more possible with jiu-jitsu and judo, and I would argue like sambo, grappling arts, where the leverage can be applied with the whole body, than it is in, say, boxing or karate or taekwondo. And they all make that same, oh, look, I'll teach you how to punch properly. You'll be able to put anyone down. Bullshit. Give me a 100-pound woman, teach her how to punch as good as you want. She's going to look Mike Tyson in the eye, punch him, and he's going to just laugh at her. Size matters there. The amount of mass she can put behind that punch, even a solid punch done properly, matters. And you can't change physics. So the example I always make is, if you have something that has infinite strength, let's say Superman. Superman can pull planets in the comic book, so he has essentially infinite strength. Can you put him in an armbar? No, right? Because no matter how good the fulcrum is, no matter how much you pull on that wrist, he's just going to go boop and be out of it. And that's just the way it is. So size matters, guys. I'm sorry to say that. It helps, and everybody can learn it, even if you're small, but have a realistic expectation of who you're going to beat. And with that said, I'm a pretty big guy. I'm 250 pounds. If I went up against the Mountain, my jiu-jitsu might not mean as much as I really wish it would, unless I get a hold of his neck. And boy, I'm not even sure then he can't just pull me off of him in some kind of athletic, crazy way. So it matters, and you should really respect the fact that people are bigger than you and stronger than you, and that's okay. This next one is really related to it, and it's that age doesn't matter. And if you've ever watched the Gracie Academy, they have something they call the Boyd belts, and I'm gonna bastardize the way they say it here, but it's something like every 10 years and every 20 pounds or something like that is kind of equivalent to a different belt. So if you're a black belt who's 60 years old and you're going up against a blue belt who's 20 years old, and they have 30 pounds on you, that's like going up against another black belt. That's kind of how they equate it, or at least from your perspective, that's how it feels. Which kind of comes back to the size mattering and everything too. But the point is, like, and you've probably heard me say it a lot recently, is as I've gotten older, I've recognized the fact that I'm not nearly as fast as I used to be. I'm still very mobile for my age. I'm still, and I'm not that old. I'm 45. But when I'm going up against a 25-year-old, man, I really do notice the difference. And even someone who's in their like early to mid 30s, like I notice a difference. And the way you train needs to be smart for that age group. Last time I did a video, it was based on it. Well, it was inspired by Dr. Mike Israetel, and one of the things he talks about in the gym, if you're like over 40s, is control the weight. Like you shouldn't be just throwing weight around real fast. Your likelihood for injury is through the roof after you get over 40, especially when it comes to weightlifting. Even though it's really good for you, and when done properly, it's very safe. But if you're just going in there, throwing as much weight as you can, as fast as you can, you're gonna get injured, and then you're not gonna do it anymore. And it's the same thing with jiu-jitsu. If you're just going in there and every match is balls to the wall, and you're just trying to win everything, you're gonna get injured and you're gonna quit. And I know several guys that unfortunately they made it to black belt, first degree black belt, and they quit because they didn't know how to train properly for their age, and they blame it on jiu-jitsu when it was really probably on more to not giving in to the ego of wanting to roll as hard as you can every time, doing more positional stuff, things like that. We talked about it a little bit a few videos ago, but hopefully that helps. All right, number three. Number three is that we want to bring the fight to the ground, and we want to fight on the ground. I think that's even a better way to say it. And why does this myth exist? Well, one, we do a lot of ground grappling, right? And the sport itself, when you're looking at the sport of jiu-jitsu, is definitely a lot of ground grappling, right? Like it's mostly ground, and that's fine. But like when you're looking at jiu-jitsu as self-defense, the other person doesn't necessarily know how to grapple, and I think that's important to understand. And when you're fighting, the goal is to put them on the ground. And if you go down with them for a moment, that's fine. But really, you want to be on top, and you want to be in a position that you can just leave. I tell my students all the time, normally adjusted people don't get into fights. The fights come to you sometimes. That happens. But, if you're a normally adjusted person and someone comes up, hey, you're looking at my girl, you could be like, man, my bad. You just de-escalate it and leave. You wouldn't fight about it because that doesn't make sense. And that's where a lot of people think, you want to fight on the ground, you're going to get stabbed, you're going to get this, you're going to get that. Look, I don't care who you are. If some dude pulls out a knife, I don't care if you're doing karate, taekwondo, grappling, whatever, get out of there. Don't try to fight that person. They have a force multiplier called a knife or a gun or a whatever. Don't fight them, right? You shouldn't be fighting anyway. In the last ditch effort that I have to, for some reason, fight somebody, I can. And I can close the distance, put them on the ground, and stay in a dominant position where I can look around and make sure his buddy isn't coming to soccer kick me in the head. I certainly don't want to be on my back playing guard. The guard has three purposes, and if you didn't know these, write them down right now, guys. This is your bonus information. The purpose of a guard is to submit, to sweep, or to get on your feet. And if you can't do any of those, you have a shitty guard. Keep working it. But you need to be able to get on your feet at any time. And that is super important, because in a fight, you don't know if that dude's coming to kick you in the head. That's why, and maybe I'll do a different video on guard pulling, but that's why so many people hate guard pulling. And we can talk about that. But we don't want to be on the ground in a fight. We just want to put them on the ground, because now the ground is a force multiplier. It's gives you extra leverage. You can just stand on them, you can sit on them, you can do whatever you want, or you can just walk away. You can throw them over your hip, let them land, knock the wind out of them a little bit, be like, hey man, we're done, and I'm leaving, and then leave. Unless you're in a situation where family members are in danger or something, there's really no reason to be grappling on the ground in a fight. And we learn to do it so that we can get out of it as quickly as possible and finish the fight as quickly as possible. Hit the ground, break an arm, leave. Hit the ground, throw on a choke, leave. That's the goal. And that's a goal propagated mainly by people who don't know self-defense well, or who have never really trained jiu-jitsu and just see it as like a grappling art, and all they know is what they see on TV. Sorry, I had to get my drink. Not sponsored. Okay. Here's a big one. Black belts can and should be able to tap anyone. Well, this kind of goes back to the first couple points, right? Size and strength matters, age matters. So if we're talking about a black belt, like myself, for example, I'm a black belt. I roll with everybody. I still, fortunately, am healthy enough to do that. But I can't say that I roll to try to tap everybody. That's not usually my goal. It never really was, because I came up in an MMA school, so a lot of times my goal was just to get into a dominant position. If you don't know the rest of my background, I've been training martial arts for 40 years, only 20 of that in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which means I've got 20 years of striking experience as well. And so, I'm perfectly content getting to mount and just punching you in the face. Like, that's kind of how I was raised in Jiu-Jitsu, right? That's part of the game. And so some of the elegance that comes with submissions is a little bit lost on me. Not that I don't appreciate it. I love it. I think it's amazing. But I've just never been a submission fighter in that way, because to me, the TKO was also a valid submission. With that said, can you tap everyone? Not necessarily, right? Where it might take a long time. Depends who I'm rolling, what their size is, how experienced they are. And then these days, guys, a belt doesn't really always tell you the whole story, right? Like, and I say these days, that's probably always been true. I'm sure there's always been some athletic kid in the gym, that whoever grandmaster was looking at, and that kid is just getting everybody. He's just on top of the game, and they're like, wow, that guy's going to go somewhere, right? Like, he's just really good. And you're going to see that. So it's not that you can tap everybody, but you should be, especially if you're an instructor. So let me start there. If you're an instructor and you're a black belt, you should be trying to be a professional. And what I mean by that is, everybody thinks professional just means that they're paid. That doesn't even have anything to do with being a professional. Professional is how you conduct yourself in the academy, and a professional is also about how you conduct yourself as far as your knowledge base. So if you're teaching, you should try to be as competent as possible in the knowledge base at the very least, even if you can't do it. Watching, say, Gordon Ryan beat Souders last night was so impressive. What do? I watch, I see how he did it, I try to understand it. I can't beat Josh Souders. Are you kidding? That guy would murder me. He would murder me. It wouldn't even be close, probably. But I can understand it. I can explain it. I can coach others in what happened. That's what good coaches do, right? And that's what it means to be a professional, is to be as skilled in your field as you can be. Whether you're paid or not is beside the point. It's about how you approach it. So, can black belts tap everyone? No. We can probably beat the majority of people. I like to think that anybody who's walking in off the street that doesn't know any real grappling or jiu-jitsu, they get tapped pretty quick. And how many do I really need? How many tricks do I need to beat someone who doesn't know anything? Not many. You can do that as a decent blue belt. So it's not really that hard, right? But can we tap everybody? No, absolutely not. I've got brown belts I can't tap, for sure. So anyway, that's just the honest truth of it. And I think that is the goal, right? Is to bring up people who are more skilled than you, more knowledgeable than you, create an academy that people can get better than you were, so that the next generation is even better. That should be the goal. That's always been the goal in martial arts. All right, number one. This one I see all over Reddit all the time. I see it all over Facebook. Someone will write in, hey man, how do I get in shape for jiu-jitsu? What can I do? And people write this, and it as an exercise physiologist, this makes me want to die every time I read it. It's something to the effect of, other exercise isn't necessary, all you need is jiu-jitsu. Look, if you have time to dedicate to one thing, you don't have time for the gym and jiu-jitsu, do jiu-jitsu. You will get in okay shape, especially depending on the type of academy you're at. Some of them are very intense. Some of them are more, like mine's, more relaxed in classes. You do some rolling, you do some movement, but I'm definitely not running a CrossFit workout during my warm-ups or anything like that. But some of them are. If you only have time for one, do jiu-jitsu, because you're going to get in decent shape and have a skill. You're going to be able to use what you learn. If you have time for both, which I would argue you probably do, in 99% of cases, you have to be willing to go with a little bit less sleep, and you have to be willing to maybe go to jiu-jitsu 1 day less, do 2 days of working out and 2 to 3 days of jiu-jitsu, and you're good. Now you're working out and you're going to be able to use that. And everybody's like, oh, you need to be doing functional workouts. Guys, we could go on forever about how that doesn't even exist. That's not a real thing. But the function is built in the skill development, and you do the skill development in your jiu-jitsu classes. So just get stronger. And I highly recommend, if you have to pick between the two, strength training over cardiovascular training. Not that cardiovascular training isn't important. It's a very important component of physical fitness. But as far as jiu-jitsu and surviving jiu-jitsu for a long period of time, putting a little bit of extra muscle on you, one, is going to improve your basal metabolic rate, meaning that you'll lose weight faster, you'll use more energy naturally, and two, it's going to put a little extra padding on you that will help prevent injury, and it's going to increase your bone density, which will also help prevent injury. So those things combined mean that I would definitely put strength training above cardiovascular training, and then do cardiovascular training as just like a walk with the family 3 days a week. People complain, oh, I've got to spend time with my family. Cool. Exercise with your family. Go on a walk 3 times a week. Say, hey, it's a daily walk. There you go. Now you've got your cardiovascular training in. Because honestly, walking is one of the best cardiovascular activities you can do. But it is absolutely essential. Like, jiu-jitsu is not enough if you have the option to do more than one. If you absolutely don't, do jiu-jitsu. But if you have time to do both, you should definitely do both. The American College of Sports Medicine opens their book with a statement similar to the effect of physical fitness is reasonable cause for prevention against all-cause mortality. Something to that effect. I'm trying to remember it off the top of my head. But the point is, any way that you could possibly die, being physically fit will prevent it. Literally any way. Old age, being physically fit, you'll typically live longer. Heart attack, obviously, if you're more physically fit, you're less likely to have a heart attack. Cancer, you're more likely to survive the cures to cancer, which are terrible in and of themselves. All these things. Car wreck, because you're physically fit, you're less likely to get as injured, and you're more likely to heal up quickly from it. All these things will be prevented by physical fitness, and it's so important. So I highly recommend that if you have time, get other exercise in other than jiu-jitsu. So those are my 5 myths. First one, size doesn't matter, then age doesn't matter. We want to fight on the ground. Black belts can and should be able to tap everyone in the world, and there is no other form of exercise necessary. All myths, all bullshit. Guys, thanks for watching. Let me know a myth or two that you know. Tell me in the comments below. I want to hear it. Talk to you later.